It's Friday, April 8th. In the headlines, enhanced security measures are coming. Taxi drivers chided for bad behavior on the road. Regionally, the Caribbean's multi-peril risk pool wants the region to adjust its current risk management strategies. And in sports, Jamaican netballer Janelle Fowler shines against Australia. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom Gale. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced that special legislation known as the Enhanced Security Measures Act, ESMA, will be brought before Parliament shortly. Speaking at the groundbreaking ceremony for new Little London Police Station in Westmoreland this week, Mr. Holness said that special emergency powers are needed to dramatically bring down murders. The Prime Minister says special emergency powers are required as part of the crime-fighting strategy and plan, adding that it is an important tool to give communities at war a sense of peace. According to Mr. Holness, generally, perpetrators and victims of crime are young men between the ages of 16 and 24, and the proposed Enhanced Security Measures Act will place a specific focus on this area. He stresses that there is an emergency in the country and the government and judiciary must recognize it. Prime Minister Holness also revealed that the government will be moving towards a compulsory national service program to be rolled out in short order through the Jamaica National Service Corps. Opposition member and spokesperson on housing, transportation and works is pleading with the government to remove the late fees for operators in the transport sector.
Have operators out there that give a bad name to many. You still have those out there who are hard-working Jamaicans who just cannot afford at the time when the renewal. So even though that your CEO has said a 2-week, $10,000 tough, Minister. It's tough at this point in time for that late fee. And the Minister of Finance said that he's giving $25,000 to each operator who has registered. But you can give them 25 in one hand and take out 10 out of the other hand when they're late.
While speaking on the Transport Authority, the opposition MP, Michael Phillips, says it is time for a thorough policy evaluation, viability and sustainability study of the agency, noting that the Transport Authority needs to build out its research capacity using data to drive government policy for the public transport sector and to drive efficiency. Meanwhile, he scolded taxi operators for what is now seen as indiscipline on the public roads. He stressed that this is worrying and the situation is way beyond the capacity of both the Transport Authority and the small team of police officers who enforce rules in the sector. He gave examples of the indiscipline seen.
With taxis stopping suddenly everywhere, driving on the right-hand side, stopping at stoplights to let off passengers, pulling out without signals, overcrowding and operating without regard to the road traffic regulations.
$2 billion will be invested to bring 8,500 new hotel rooms to the local tourism offerings over the next 5 years. Portfolio Minister Edmund Bartlett says this will result in the creation of at least 24,000 part-time and full-time jobs for building engineers, contractors, project managers and other specialists, and at least 12,000 jobs for construction workers.
This is the kind of development and investment that we continue with. I could, Madam Speaker, enumerate the many, starting with Princess, of course. We have 2,000 rooms coming with Hard Rock. We have 1,000 rooms coming with Sandals from beaches in St. Ann. We have the Viva Wyndham to the north side of Negril with 1,000 rooms. We have Rio in Trelawney, in Falmouth, 700 rooms. That groundbreaking will be done on the 20th of April. We have the new Secrets Resort for Richmond in St. Ann with 700 rooms and 280 rooms, also Secrets Dreams, as it is called, in Montego Bay. Bahia Principe to have expansion, and a number of others, a total of some 8,500 new rooms to come on board within the next 5 years.
The minister says that the appetite to invest is very strong, and to keep this momentum, he says the ministry continues to work closely with JAMPRO, which is currently developing a national business portal where investors will be able to apply for all relevant government licenses and permits for investment projects. Minister Bartlett also informed the House of Representatives during his sectoral speech that Jamaica is expanding its home porting capabilities.
We've started already with the AIDA coming out of Europe that home ports in Montego Bay on the weekend. Now with Montego Bay, Falmouth, Ocho Rios, and the Prime Minister has given instruction with regards to Port Antonio for the development of a port of call in Port Antonio. And the Port Royal, which had a ship only last week, Mariella, and we're going to have more calls there. Jamaica needs one more port that we're working on the South Coast, Minister Green. Yes, on the South Coast, and then we would have a full multi-port, not modal yet, coming up to modal, but a multi-port destination that will allow Jamaica to have its own itinerary.
Regional health authorities are calling for the urgent protection of the environment. The Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, marked World Health Day this week with a virtual event under the theme, Our Planet, Our Health. More than 400 participants listened and discussed how the health of the planet is linked to our own. Jamaica's senior medical officer at the Northeast Regional Health Authority, Dr. Nicole Dawkins-Wright, in her presentation, says the best move is to mitigate the effects of climate change because the world is already feeling the effects through severe weather events.
For example, within the Caribbean, if you just look within the last 2 years, we have seen record-breaking hurricane seasons. In 2020, there were 20 named tropical storms, 13 hurricanes, 6 of which were major. And last year in 2021, we had 21 named, including 7 hurricanes, 4 of which became major.
Dr. Dawkins says these weather events and the change in the world's climate, specifically in the Caribbean, is affecting our water source.
Our freshwater sources, which is where we get most of our freshwater in our coastal aquifers, are being affected in terms of intrusion. We are seeing decreasing in our water quality from salinization. And of course, there's the issue of the increased threat of extended droughts and water security challenges that we'll have to contend with.
She also notes the link between climate change and physical ailments.
The same factors that contribute to climate change that Sabos has already elaborated on it also concomitantly contribute to the deterioration in the air that we breathe. And it is concentrated in small island states. We already know that exposure to air pollution is not only responsible for the respiratory diseases like COPD and lung cancer and pneumonia. We know that the toxic particles reach into our system and cause major health challenges. We have issues with our non-communicable diseases, or ischemic heart disease and stroke, even in disorders of our reproductive systems.
According to the United Nations, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, which produces heat-trapping gases. Prime Minister Andrew Holness on Wednesday launched the Nationally Determined Contributions Partnerships New Finance Strategy, which is aimed at mobilizing urgent funding for climate action. The event took place at Hyatt Zilara Rose Hall Resort in Montego Bay, St. James. The NDC partnership, which Jamaica co-chairs with the United Kingdom, has more than 200 members worldwide, including developed and developing countries. NDC refers to each country's strategy to cut down its own greenhouse gas emissions and build resiliency against the negative effects of climate change in accordance to the Paris Agreement. According to the statement from the Office of the Prime Minister, the partnership's new finance strategy demonstrates the partners' commitment to accelerating the process necessary to access climate finance for developing countries. The aim is to support the development of regulatory frameworks to attract domestic and international investment, integrate climate plans into national budgets, and post-coronavirus economic recovery plans, and identify as well as develop bankable projects with member and private sector investment. Prime Minister Holness says that approximately $1 billion has already been deployed through the partnership to support countries in laying out the groundwork for finance. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, says there was a 6.6% increase in the country's labor force based on the last survey in October 2021. That's a word from Statin's Director General, Carol Coy. She was speaking at the Institute's latest quarterly press brief. She says at the time of the survey, 1,234,800 persons were employed.
This was an increase of 6.6% or 76,600 persons when compared to October 2020. These persons were engaged in economic activities for at least 1 hour during the September 19 to 25 reference week.
Ms. Coy says females recorded the largest increase in employment.
The number of employed females grew by 8.5% to 568,600, while for employed males the increase was 5.1% to 676,200.
She says the labor force survey showed an increase across all age groups. Looking at the employed labor force by industry groups, the survey says most industries showed an increase in employment in October 2021. Cabinet has approved the purchase of land at 6 Upper Lady Musgrave Road for housing the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offences and Carnal Abuse, CISOCA. Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for information, Robert Morgan, made the announcement at this week's virtual post-cabinet press brief.
There was also the approval of the purchase of a property located at 6 Upper Lady Musgrave Road, and this approval was done to purchase the property from the National Commercial Bank, Insurance Agency and Fund Managers Limited at a total of $220 million.
Cabinet also gave the nod for the relocation of the Jamaica Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, JSPCA, from its facility in Halfway Tree to 193 Old Hope Road.
I think this is Hope Gardens, and this was done because of challenges the JSPC has been having with their current location.
Based on geolocation, the approved spot falls on land belonging to the Government of Jamaica, specifically the Veterinary Services Division of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. The move ends a nearly decade-long struggle for the JSPCA after it was given notice to vacate the Winchester Road property in Halfway Tree back in 2013. The JSPCA provides an animal shelter for stray and abandoned pets, and it's one of the largest operational veterinary clinics on the island. It has been at the Halfway Tree location since 1991. An estimated timeline for the JSPCA's relocation was not immediately specified. Time now for the Business Report with Danita Rodney.
State-owned oil refinery Petrojam that previously racked up billions of dollars in unaccounted losses between 2013 and 2017 on Tuesday reported that significant improvement has been made in reducing leakage of the commodity. In 2018, Auditor General Pamela Monroe Ellis reported that over a 5-year period, the entity reported that it used 1.5 billion barrels of oil, valuing approximately $12.5 billion, but could not account for over $600 600,000 barrels, valuing $5.2 billion. However, at the end of the 2020-21 fiscal year, Petrojam reported that oil loss stood at 45,000 barrels and that the team is dedicated to continue its investigation into the losses and to work on initiatives to reduce losses above the tolerable limit of 0.4%. In foreign exchange trading for Thursday, April 7, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.19. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $123.60. The pound sterling traded for $202.58, and the euro sold for an average of $170.86. The following reflects the movement of the JSE indices in Thursday's trading session. The JSE index advanced by 3,266 points to close at over 300,000 units. The junior market index advanced by 12 points to close at over 4,000 units. The combined market index advanced by 3,172 points to close at over 400,000 units, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 4,390 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 47 advanced, 41 declined, and 20 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 13A Student Living Jamaica Limited, 1834 Investments Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% cumulative redeemable preference shares, Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU deferred share, and Consolidated Bakeries Jamaica Limited. Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited was the volume leader with over 9 million units, followed by Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 6 million units, and Pulse Investments Limited with over 5 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Clico Investment Fund was the volume leader with over 34,000 shares, followed by Calypso Macro Index Fund with 153 shares being traded. The Barbados Stock Exchange saw Cave Shepherd and Company Limited as the sole security trading 46 shares. On Wednesday, the Secretary General of CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett, took the time to address regional and international members gathered at the first Caribbean Regional Risk Conference, which was organized by the Barbados-based Caribbean Development Bank and the Cayman Islands-based Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility. Dr. Barnett, speaking on the topic, Country Risk Management, a key imperative for the Caribbean and a pathway to resilience and sustainable recovery post-COVID-19, briefed delegates on the impact of the two financial institutions on CARICOM member countries and how the pandemic tested the regional crisis preparedness.
The collaboration of these two financial institutions, which are so important to our community, has produced significant benefits to our member states as they seek to manage their country's various risks. Indeed, as they seek to address the increasing risks associated with climate change and its manifestations across their economies, and as they live through the impact of the COVID pandemic, quite aware of the risks associated with reopening their economies, while quite certain of the impact of not reopening their economies. Indeed, management of risk is a crucial element in the drive towards creating a resilient region. More than that, building resilience really means achieving success in managing risk and uncertainty as we seek to build stronger economies and societies, and as we seek sustainable long-term development. Risk management, even if we do not call it that, is at the core of plans and strategies for post-COVID-19 recovery. Rebuilding our economies and lives in a post-COVID-19 world urges us to confront our vulnerabilities in more effective ways. The COVID-19 pandemic did not only devastate CARICOM economies, but it also provided the opportunity to test regional crisis preparedness and management mechanisms in ways we had not previously envisioned.
Dr. Barnett stated that regional cooperation and proactive crisis management has helped to contain the pandemic reasonably well and gave credit to the National Crisis Preparedness and Management System. In market data for oil prices were stable on Friday but remained on course for a second weekly fall after countries announced plans to release crude from their strategic stocks. Brent crude futures were down 1 cent at $100.50 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude gained 31 cents or 0.3% to $96.34 a barrel. In international news, oil and gas companies in the United States are being accused of profiting from the Ukraine war at the expense of American consumers. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher reports.
Americans are feeling the pain at the pumps. Earlier this year, the cost of filling up the car with petrol hit an all-time high in the US. The war in Ukraine has hit Russian oil imports. A US House subcommittee called a meeting to discuss what can be done to help. But the hearing quickly dissolved into political bickering, Democrats claiming oil companies are padding profits at the consumer's expense.
If the price of gas is driven by the global market, why is the price of oil coming down, but the price at the pump is still near record highs? If it's an issue of supply and demand, wouldn't that be reflected in the global price of oil as well? Something just doesn't add up.
And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Denida Rodney.
In regional news, beginning in St. Lucia, common entrance exams will no longer be used as the gauge of when and if students transition out of primary education environments, as education officials have announced commencement of official implementation of the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment. NBC Prime has the details.
National education officials have initiated official implementation of the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, CPEA. Several countries in the Caribbean, including St. Lucia, have decided to retire the common entrance examination and implement the CPEA. The official launch was hosted earlier today. The new assessment structure is expected to provide a more gradual accumulation of achievement for students.
Though it has been a long journey, I know it has been hard work, and it is indeed an accomplishment this morning as we retire the common entrance examination and introduce the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, CPEA.
Long responsible for determining secondary school placement, replacement of the common entrance exam is expected to eliminate the anxiety and stresses affecting scholars sitting the two-subject exam. Dr. Antoine reflected on previous iterations of the exam, which evolved slightly over time, and her own experience in being assessed.
The common entrance was a high-stake exam, a one-shot, as we have heard before, primarily used for placement of students at secondary school. Students competed for places at the most prestigious schools or the schools of their first choice. It was a timed examination, and the slower students were disadvantaged because they were not afforded the opportunity to work at their own pace. Some have shared their experience at common entrance, but I wrote the Dr. Clough common entrance exam. This was the one where if you got it wrong, they subtracted the wrong answers from the right ones that you had.
According to Dr. Antoine Prosper, the result of such a format was the amplified anxiety of students facing a challenge in which they weren't even able to guess responses out of fear of eroding any progress gained. Understanding the impact of turning a new page, Dr. Prosper cited the ability of teachers to now pivot from instructing on material with the primary goal of passing the exam, instead having a more comprehensive testing format.
In the Bahamas, addressing controversial comments made by National Security Minister Wayne Monroe over the 4-year plea deal for a 40-year-old man who was accused of impregnating a 14-year-old girl, President Davis says Monroe needs to learn how to keep his personal comments to himself.
Amid calls for National Security Minister Wayne Monroe to submit his letter of resignation, Prime Minister Philip Davis telling reporters today he doesn't think a resignation is warranted. He did, however, say that Monroe needs to learn to keep his personal comments to himself.
I don't know that what he has done amounts to that. He has already expressed his regrets in my conversations with him, and if you follow what he had to say, it appears to be more of his personal view, and he has to come to learn as a young politician that when he holds a post as he does, his personal views may be best kept with himself.
CCRIF SPC, the Caribbean's multi-peril risk pool, wants the region to adjust its current risk management strategies. Chief Executive Officer Isaac Anthony has called on states to adopt a more holistic view in their approach to risk management and governance. The call came at the virtual Caribbean Regional Risk Conference.
I pause here to wonder what the situation would have been today had there been in place pre-COVID a comprehensive risk management framework for health pandemic. Needless to say, significantly fewer lives would have been lost to COVID, and the socio-economic losses would have been far less, with much less persons pushed below the poverty line. Adaptation to this compendium of risk places enormous pressure on regional governments who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring fiscal prudence, maintaining critical infrastructure, while balancing lives and economic livelihoods under increasing budgetary constraints.
President of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Dr. Jean Leon, sees risk mitigation as essential to sustainable development. He put forward 4 key areas of policy he says should be implemented to buttress a country's risk mitigation efforts.
First, countries should improve governance of internal risk assessment processes. Governance is key. The second, countries should elect national risk coordinators to create an effective conduit for knowledge transfer across the Caribbean and for guidance in the implementation of an integrated sovereign risk management framework. Third, countries should actively focus on risk reduction as a means to reducing funding costs and financing an expedited path towards achieving the SDGs. And fourth, adequate and appropriate risk tools should be maintained.
In sports, Jamaican netballer Janelle Fowler continues her explosive start in the Australian Super Netball season with another near-flawless effort to pilot West Coast Fever to their second win in as many outings. Playing at the John Cain Arena last weekend, West Coast Fever pushed back Collingwood Magpies 70-53 with Fowler at the center of that performance with 58 goals from 61 attempts. The veteran 32-year-old shot a perfect 64 from as many attempts in the season opener as Fever stormed to a 82-63 win over Sunshine Coast Lightning 2 weeks ago. West Indies women head coach Courtney Walsh wants more competitive cricket and developmental camps to get his side better prepared for international competition. Coach Walsh says although he's pleased with the Caribbean women reaching the semi-finals of the tournament after not having much competitive cricket due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the next steps were to ensure the group increased playing time and provide more avenues for new talent to be developed. Walsh, who assumed responsibility for the team in late 2020, also stresses the importance of having regional territorial boards involved in honing the talent and skills of the region's female cricketers. The United States has confirmed Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the U.S. Supreme Court, making her the first black woman in the nation's history to serve on its highest court.
This was the moment when American history was made.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
When the nation's first black female vice president announced the confirmation of the first black woman to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Never, never has a black woman held the title of justice. Ketanji Brown Jackson will be the first, and I believe the first of more to come.
Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation passed by the narrow margin of 53-47, with 3 Republicans joining all 50 Democrats in voting yes.
She's within the mainstream. She's also highly qualified, intelligent, capable person, and I wish her the very best.
The remaining Senate Republicans voted no, some voicing concern over Jackson's work representing Guantanamo Bay detainees when she served as a federal public defender. Others accused her of being a tool for the political left.
I believe she will prove to be the furthest left of any justice to have ever served on the Supreme Court.
Members of this committee.
Jackson defended against that assertion during her confirmation hearing.
I interpret and apply the law to the facts of the case before me without fear or favor, consistent with my judicial oath.
Let's check in with our ECAP reporter Alicia to see what's happening in the world of entertainment. Hey Alicia.
Hey Simone girlie, this week's show have a vibe. You know, we have new music, birthday shoutouts, Grammy red carpet highlights, and the full carnival in Trinidad and Tobago this year. So join us this Saturday at 8:30 p.m. on PBC Jamaica for Entertainment Recap.
And with that, we call an end to today's newscast. On behalf of our entire news production team, thank you so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.